All right, welcome to another edition of the Black History movie bonus show. Just throwing it out there, the podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing Ma Rainey, and joining me today are Melissa,
Hey,
Melly, sorry,
it's all right.
Talia,
Hey y'all.
Telly, Telly,
No, no, we're not doing that today. No, ma'am.
I'm gonna call you Telly because it rhymes
Please
with
don't.
Melly.
I won't respond.
and Danielle, Danny.
Hi guys.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to go into it. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So, our film discussion for this episode is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It was the first of many Broadway plays, and his number one, his first hit on Broadway by August Wilson. It's set in 1920 Chicago, and Ma Rainey is a blues pioneer. She's also, if all my life I had to fight was a person, and her band of musicians decide to travel up north and embark on what ultimately becomes an ill-fated recording session. Some stuff goes down. They're dealing with, the white power structure at the recording studio. And basically, the band members reflect and they ruminate on what it means to live in an America where Black lives only seem to serve as an economic means to an end. The film is currently streaming on Netflix. It stars Viola Davis, Glynn Turman, aka Colonel Taylor, Coleman Domingo, and is directed by George C. Wolfe, produced by Denzel Washington, and it also marks the late Chadwick Boseman's last performance on screen. And it was an amazing performance.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So let's go into that a little bit. How did we feel? Like, were the emotions running even higher watching this movie because Chadwick Boseman, it was his last performance?
I
Yeah,
think
I think he did a good job. Oh, go ahead, Melly.
oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, no, go, go.
I know. I think for me, it was. I think I purposely wasn't trying to watch this movie in a way because I knew it would be a little sad watching him and knowing what he was knowing now what he was going through then, knowing that no one knew what he was going through, and just for him to still give that performance. I mean, it's incredible. Just him, just the whole performance, the fact that he was that, sick, the fact that he was sick and still just hit it out the park.
Yeah, I mean, he beasted that role, and I don't know if you all remember, but that scene when he was in the basement and he was talking to God, and he was saying that he prayed like it was like it felt like he was really saying that. I don't know, to me, like it was like I prayed and I did everything you wanted me to do, and I'm still, you still let all this stuff happen. And then to Melly's point, knowing what he was going through, it felt real. So if the acting, if life imitated art or whatever it was, he did a real crazy, ridiculous, stupid job with that role, man.
Agreed. Agreed. I just, an already emotionally heightened,
Yeah.
monologue. You could feel the undertones of, all of that going into it. What an artist to like commit yourself to getting the art out there and
Mm.
still undergoing all of that physical pain and
Mm-hmm.
you know it's amazing. But having said that, what themes does this movie raise, that we were most into? What did y'all think? I know one of the themes that it raised for me, and we talked about this with some of the other movies, is music industry exploitation
Mm.
with Black people.
Mm-hmm.
It seems this is a recurring theme. Prince had the slave on his face. Some of our biggest, largest artists fought, to get what they were due, and it's no different in 1920. or
Yeah.
1927.
Right. And it's still no different now when you really think about it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's still they're still exploited. Some are fortunate enough to kind of do their own thing, right? I think there's different platforms now to get out there, but I think that it's even more evident like back then, right? When like Chadwick's character Levy, he gives the man all those songs, right? And he's like, oh, it's not what we're looking for. But then at the end of the day, he paid him nothing for those songs, practically nothing. And they still used his songs, sung by a white man.
At the end, yeah, completely white band, white musicians, no black faces, but they took the music.
Yep.
Yeah, isn't
and I
that the
think,
way of artists anyway, right?
and I think they paid he paid him $5 per
Per
song,
song.
right?
Yeah.
But he had just paid them $25 to record,
Yep.
Mhm.
right? So he paid him even less for
Even
his
less.
songs.
Mm-hmm.
What an insult to injury.
Right.
Disrespectfully paid him, right? He just put the
Right,
money
yes.
in his pocket, like here,
Yes.
you like if he
like
could
I'm gonna take them off your hands for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And if you write any more, I'll give you $5 a piece for those.
absolutely. It's the same thing. It happens it's still happening in different forms and different ways, and I just thought they did a great job with that, showing that.
Isn't
Um,
that capitalism though, right? You pay someone because you don't have what it takes to create. So you give someone pennies on the dollar for what you're going to make to sell the product, and because you have a network or whatever it is, right? Isn't that how
or
it
you
works?
don't, or you don't pay them
Or you
anything.
don't pay them anything, right?
How about that?
Right, that's how it started, right? You don't pay them anything, and then talk about boots and bootstraps. But
I don't have no boots.
you need boots first. How about we start there?
Yeah, I mean, she, going to Ma Rainey now, she said they don't care nothing about me. She said, and she knew,
Right.
you
Yes.
know, that's when she came in, she knew. She was like, they don't care nothing about me. All they want is my voice. They want to steal, and it was almost like they wanted to steal her voice. And she's like, they want to put it in their little boxes and take my voice and sell it out there. And so she knew, hey, you need me, and I'm gonna milk it for all it's worth. And if you're not gonna give me the respect, I'm gonna demand it.
Right.
So how do y'all feel about, to this day, another issue, Black women in white spaces having to demand their respect and knowing their worth and what they can get? Like, when you know how much someone else is getting paid, right? And you know what you bring to the table, and that doesn't match up. It's, do you have the guts? Do you have the wherewithal to ask for what you're worth?
It seems like to me that's one of the reasons that in corporations they keep salaries so hush hush,
Yes, they do.
It's very
because
taboo.
Yeah.
they don't want you to know, because they don't
They-
want you to know that person is making 10% more than you or whatever it may
Whatever
be.
the case may
It's
be.
very taboo in corporate America to discuss your salary.
Yeah. And like, the question, like, the question remains, do you have the balls, quote unquote, to ask for what you are worth and what you're supposed to get?
Well, the thing with Ma Rainey is she had something though that they could not get from someone else.
Mhm.
So it's not that easily transferable to corporate.
It could,
It can be,
it
but
possibly could be.
it's a little trickier, I think.
But I think that's why you had that drive to dismantle and discredit unions over the last couple decades, because that was part of, the outside of all the other stuff and issues that unions have. I think that was a leveling of the playing field. But in corporations, you don't have unionized employees, right? You don't have people that get paid on. There's no there's no equity there. I can tell you one thing, and the corporation's job is to start as low as possible right? Based on what skills they think you bring to the table. And I'll be honest with you, starting out in my career, I didn't learn about salary negotiations. Like that was like third career, a third role kind of thing that I learned about. And even then, most of those were internal moves. So it's kind of like I didn't know. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. Right. And it wasn't until my teaching job. I was talking to Danny. She was like, "Don't you let them start you any
That's
lower than
right.
right." But
I was
I
like, don't
still
you go
didn't
in there and
know.
start on the first step.
Yeah.
You have
And
this, you have that, you have that.
and
But
that was even
that's what I'm saying.
uncomfortable.
She knew.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you don't know,
Right. If you don't
because
know, you
there
don't
is
ask for it.
something you're bringing to the table that somebody
Mhm.
else is bringing to the table. Once you've reached a certain level, there is
Right.
something you're bringing.
Right.
You know you're bringing value because this person. Look at this person. You like look at this person over here. Look at this person over there. You know you're bringing something to the table, but we're still scared to ask for what we want and what.
I think sometimes the possibility of getting something versus possibly getting nothing makes you kind of back down a little bit. But
That was my experience when I got the teaching job. It's the haggling part I had trouble. I'm not
because
good at it.
there's nothing wrong with
I
saying I
didn't
have
know,
this.
right? Like
Yeah.
I went from private school to public school, and that was already a salary jump, right? And I was like, well, this is already gonna be a salary jump. So I didn't fight like for the steps the way I should have fought for the step. But then when I went from one public system to the public system I'm in now, they gave me all my steps, including the private school ones. So it was even a bigger jump. I'm like, oh, that's how it works. Okay.
Right. But if you don't ask for it,
But
like
if you
Talia
don't
said,
ask,
it's their
Never gonna
job
get
to
it.
bring you in as low as they can.
Yep.
they
Yeah.
do.
Yep. And my Rainey was gonna get every little bit because that Coca-Cola, y'all. Listen, she was like, "Y'all gonna give me a Coca-Cola? Like somebody go out and get me a
And you're gonna
Coca-Cola.
watch me drink it.
And you're gonna wait
Every
and
last
watch
drop.
and listen.
Every last
I'm
drop.
gonna put you through it because I know, and it, and we were talking about this off mic a little bit, but like I at the beginning, I'm thinking like, why is she going so hard about this Coca-Cola? Like, what's the big deal, right? And I think I shared like I was kind of like, well, what's going on here? And to be honest with you, I think that might have been intentional because that's the experience that the world has with Black women when we express our displeasure with whatever's happening in our workplaces and spaces. Right. I've heard many stories from many friends and family members where like you're like the only one there and you're the most vocal because you have to speak up and speak out. But you don't see all the steps around it, right? So if we saw that Coca-Cola scene in a vacuum and never got to see the rest of the film, we might very well have walked away and said, "Wow, my Rainey, she's just like mad difficult, right? She's what's
But
the big
you
deal?"
know what I'm you know what that jogs the just the thought process. You
Mm.
know, like when people come into spaces, they be having refreshments out
Yeah,
and gift baskets
yeah.
and fruit baskets and
Mhm,
like stuff out.
mhm,
So she knew what she knew pretty.
mhm.
You know what I
Listen, and they knew what she wanted, and they just didn't have
Right.
it there.
Listen,
She
she
was like,
got her
"We're not going to do
she
it
got
like
her
this."
car fixed the same day. Like she's
Yeah,
like, I want that car
Right.
fixed today.
Yep.
right. But
Before
she
I sign these papers.
She knew
insisted upon it.
everywhere.
You know, like it's not automatic.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
That's the thing that I think she was really driving at. Like it should be automatic. It should be like you would treat any other recording artist that you're bringing in here because I'm of value. I'm of worth. I'm
Right.
making you money. And
Right.
you
Mhm.
gotta be, why do you have to be like this?
Right. She's
Right.
not asking for any special treatment, right? Or
Yeah.
like
You know,
She's
they would
asking
have
for the
it's
water
same
out
treatment
and
they would
They
give the
didn't even
other
have
artists.
water out for her, and they were
right.
fine as hell. They
Right.
didn't have water
A
out for
recording session with instruments and you use your voice. Like,
they have
why
any
wouldn't you
water.
have that out there? You know you would do that for a white band, right?
or white woman, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about the recording studio and
Mm.
the way they filmed it. I know Talia brought an interesting perspective when we talked about this before. What was your take on the actual recording studio
Yes.
and the levels
The
and
levels, right? So you had the basement, right? And my Rainey never went to the basement. She was always like on that ground floor, right? But we had that basement, which is kind of like the undercurrent And that's where all the action happened, right? Like
That's where all the
all
black men
all the action, but then also Ma Rainey's partner, right? She was down there, like all the down and dirty stuff went down in that basement, right? But you also had like this high, it was almost like a hierarchy. Because when we saw the executives who were up in the booth, right, they were up high. They were of a higher stature. And then we had the ground floor, but then we still had that basement. And so I always thought that that was masterful on August Wilson's part to, script it in that way, because settings are very important, especially when you're dealing with, adapted playwrights, right? So
I would wonder if he did that or was it adapted for the screen
I
to do
wonder.
You have to
I
look at
think
the
it's
play.
scripted that way. I think it's written
Oh
that way
yeah.
in the original play. If
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay. That would
That's
be
something worth checking out.
Yeah.
that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good
That would be a
question.
fun
So
fact.
let's talk about some of the things that were brought up in that basement recording
Mm,
area.
everything.
What do you think the significance of that door that Levy was just so obsessed with
Oh,
Mm,
and
well,
trying to get onto the other side of that door?
I feel like that door just represented like obstacles basically that are in the way and that were in the way for Black people at that time. Um, and you know how they say trying to break down doors. Well, he literally broke down that door, but then figuratively he was still closed in. You know, there was no place to go once that door was broken down. So like he could see if he looked up, he could see the way out, but he couldn't get out. So to me, that said a whole lot. You could see that there was something else, right? Just when you break through these doors trying to get to what you know is available on the other side, but then there's still all these other things blocking you in. So I that was definitely
And like a
done
literal
on
and
purpose.
figurative
Yeah.
blocking you in. Like
Yes.
there was no, like it was a block. It was a square. Just
There was no way to
nowhere to
get out,
go.
even though he could see out.
Mm-hmm. You
yeah,
can
and
see
Absolutely.
the light. You can see the light, but you can't get there.
I think Cutler had made a point to him as well, because he said something about the door, he said the door wasn't locked before. And Cutler's like, nah, this is a different room, man. Right. And so I thought that spoke to, Levy's inability to adapt himself to different situations and different settings, because he thinks every setting is the same. And Cutler's trying to tell him, like, nah, man, we weren't even in here before. Like, what are you talking about? So he was having trouble, I don't want to say assimilating, but I can't think of any other word. Like he can't adapt. He was stuck in whatever space he was in and couldn't get out of it.
But you know, that makes sense if you think about what was his underlying issue
Hmm.
in the first
Mm.
place with his mom.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So he was still stuck on that situation.
Yep.
I mean, rightfully so. I'm sure he never got a chance to deal with it the way
I'm
he
sure there
needed
was
to.
no mental health
No
in
help.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, come on. There was
Right.
no mental,
There was
no.
no
He did not
therapy.
get to
There
no
was
deal with that.
therapy.
no
Right.
Right.
anybody. There was no letting it out. He just was holding on to that ever
Because those
since.
were people he worked with and they didn't even know.
Right.
Right. And he, like, even the fact that he carried not only the trauma inside, but then he had the physical representation of what had happened as well. So it's a constant reminder of this happened to you, but there was never no healing from it. Like he
Mhm.
never healed from that happening to him. And I think that's what ultimately led him down this path, and an unfortunate and tragic path, right? I hate to give away the ending, but
Oh,
it's
Spoiler.
there's we have
Spoilers
spoilers
about
all
the whole
yeah.
thing.
We
all
have
spoilers
spoilers.
throughout the whole thing, but it was just unfortunate because I think just the stepping on the shoe, that was like the breaking point for him. And
Well, they always say that when somebody breaks, right, it's usually not about the
it's
thing that
usually
just
not
happened.
about, it's something small. It's
Yep.
usually about something so much bigger.
Yep.
It definitely, and
So
that was
let's talk about the anger and the rage that, I also thought that room was like, in terms of anger and rage, that room was, Black people trying to figure ways out of their situation, and thinking that this is the way out,
Mm,
and it's not.
it's not.
My selling of these songs, or I have a goalpost that's right here, and I'm gonna I'm gonna knock this out the park. I'm gonna get to the next level. And guess
And he
what?
was so sure of it for
He was so
himself.
sure that he was gonna get to that next
Right.
level and was not able to overcome
Yeah.
or get through or get anywhere. It's just another dead end. So that anger and that rage with everything that's happened, this continual trap of oppression,
Mm-hmm.
he took it out on the nearest, the closest person to him, which was another black man,
Yep.
and
Proximity.
not the oppressors,
Yep.
but to
No.
someone else who's also being oppressed. So we can speak about that. It happens in our communities,
Happens in
right?
society now, right?
Yeah, and
And it
I mean,
happens.
people want to like put all these statistics out about black on black crime, but it's a thing, right? It's
Proximity.
that it's proximity. The black people kill black people at the same rates that white people kill white people. It's who you're around the most. So I don't know how we got into the habit of,
Hate that
just,
argument that
yeah,
people use that
it's
as an
it's just
argument.
neighbor
Oh,
neighbor
so
on neighbor crime. Like, it's not something that's specific to
exactly.
black people.
Very frustrating to hear that.
And when you have that frustration, you talk about like domestic abuse, right? Many times you have these frustrations that are built up, and then you end up displacing it's displaced anger that's put on someone else.
Mhm.
And so hurt people. Trauma doesn't just heal on its own. And I don't
No.
know, we're in a different place in society now, but you need to work on healing
Mm,
before you try to get into any situation with anybody else, before you around people for long periods of time. Work on you and
that's a
try to
work.
fix those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. What about we could go on and on about that basement and that area and what went down in there.
Yeah.
'Cause it was so much. Before we go to the next level, I wanted to talk about I think what's his name? Toledo. Toledo
Mhm.
had a little monologue where he said if only black people knew that they were the leftovers. And I think he was speaking to Levy's ambition, right? Like, and he had also didn't they have a conversation about like I was a fool too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I was a
Yeah.
fool too, thinking I could do all these different things, and
Mhm.
you gonna learn. You gonna if it's not today,
Basically.
you basically gonna learn. So, like the leftovers was just an interesting concept. I wonder what he meant, or what do you think he meant by black people being the leftovers?
Um, I mean, for me, I thought it was like being on the margins, almost like you're not the main dish. You're what's left
After
after.
everybody else gets their plate,
Yeah.
and
Um
after everybody else has eat, like you're just left over. It's terrible. Sorry.
He said,
But
"We
that's
gonna eat
basically what it is. You're not the main course. You're not the appetizer. You're not the main course. You're not the dessert. You are the leftover. You are what's left after everybody else has already gotten their plate.
yeah.
it."
It's
I
very
always think about a Jay-Z song, "Still Nigga." Uh, I'm not black. I'm OJ.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's all right, OJ.
still black at the end of the day.
Mhm.
There's
Yes.
still that door that you cannot get through. There's still that thing that's there, even though you think like, man, this is so simple. I could just walk right here. I could just walk through this door, but no, it's
nope.
enclosed.
But I think what that room showed was this frustration and this multi-generational conversation that was happening
Mhm.
between these two men, right? And I think, we see some of that today as well, where we have Black Lives Matter movements, and some folks, and I've heard from all different areas of opinion as it related to the uprisings over the summer, but this is not the way to go about it. And then, you have some of the elders like, these young folks ain't gonna take the kind of stuff that we took, so it's like different differences of opinion of,
Mhm.
what do we do about our oppression as a people. So you had Toledo, who's kind of like, listen, I'm not making any waves. I'm not listen. I understand my station, right? I know where I am in this caste system, and I'm just gonna ride the wave and do as best as I can. And Levy, he wasn't with it. And Levy's like, no, I'm not trying to do that. I'm gonna go get me these shoes. I'm gonna make this
Right.
man pay me for these songs, and I'm gonna
Get my
make
own
something.
band
I'm gonna get
together.
my own band. I don't give a F about what my Rainey talking about. I get my own thing. Um, so you see that raw ambition, but
Yes.
it's also we have that anger and that impulsiveness that ultimately leads to the downfall at the end of the movie. So
Yeah.
Right.
So talking about that next level, so Ma Rainey is on that second level, and she has a long conversation with Cutler that brings about some, interesting topics. One of them being, one of them being, they don't care nothing about me. All they want is my voice. If you color, then you can make them some money. Uh, they're all about you. You write with them, otherwise you're just a dog in the alley.
mm,
Like that's how she feels about one coming into. So it was very cool because from the beginning of the movie, she was in her element in the South, right? She was rocking crowds, that was her thing. And then they make their way up north, and even the black people are looking at them funny in the hotel, like these country niggas. um you know that's pretty interesting that amongst ourselves we have judgments and we have things, and it was no different. I guess with the Great Migration, people often felt that in the North there were better opportunities, right?
mm-hmm.
But there's still oppression.
Right.
Even when she sent her nephew to get the Coca-Cola. They
Mm-hmm.
walked into that one store or deli or whatever it was, and the way everybody just turned and looked at them like, "No, you don't belong in here."
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
we like to have this idea about the North as this place where slavery and segregation and oppression doesn't exist. But,
Right.
take a look at yourselves, New Jersey, because like segregation is real. Mass
It's still happening.
incarceration and, disproportionate numbers of black men in prison is real in New
Well, they were getting
Jersey.
ready to arrest her at the
Yeah.
beginning of the
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
She was about to go.
Oh, yeah.
He was about to totally get arrested.
She was about to talk.
And that's the thing, when you're speaking up again, black women in this whole angry black woman trope, when you're speaking up for yourself, like that's not an act of like violence or like what do they call it, insubordination, whatever, right? It's
No compliance.
no, non-compliance. That's what it is.
Non-compliance.
Non-compliance, because I'm asking you to do something about a situation that happened to me. And I'm telling you that I didn't touch that man. He fell on his own in the
It's not
street.
my fault. He's clumsy.
Not my fault he fell.
Ah,
But I also was amazed at how she was talking to the cop, right? For 1927 time period. I
She
think
didn't want no parts of them. Like she's like, I'm not entertaining y'all's craziness.
hey,
but
not to
I also think to
Yes.
some degree she knew where she was. I feel like some of that was
Mhm.
strategic because
Mhm.
she knew she was right in front of the recording studio, and that
Right.
that guy, I forget his name, he would come running out. Whatever his name, Irvin.
Irwin or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think she knew. I think she was very aware of the places and spaces where she had power, and because there were
Absolutely.
so many places and spaces where she did not, where she did, she was going to wield that power to the
Mhm.
fullest
Yes.
of her
Absolutely.
capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah. Good observation. I love that.
very good.
Yeah. So what do you think about her brashness, her boldness, her just, even we talk about the white gaze, we talk about what's the TV show that dealt with the white gaze?
Black AF.
Yeah, Black AF.
Love that show. Shout out to
Right,
Kenya Barris.
right. We talk about the male gaze, and she was, I would say, above that.
Yeah.
in everything.
Rat's
Everything
ass
she
about
did
the
was kind of radical for her time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even her relationship with the young lady that has an affair with Levy. I just like how everything worked together. Like, the fact that Levy was after her girl, also
Levy
showed
didn't care about that. Levy didn't care either.
he didn't
But
care
I think
about
Levy,
losing his job. He was just, I think, very free spirit, right? Like he was just like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. That's it.
I think he was powered by his anger and his ambition
but I
And
think that he
power
also,
of all of the
everything.
I think that he also had some, just a bit inferiority complex, and I feel that that whole idea of sexual conquest as a way to reaffirm masculinity, was the thing for him, and I feel that he felt in many ways, emasculated by Ma Rainey. So that was kind of like his way of, even overstepping his parts in the songs. So, she had tried to, when we talk about boundaries, right? She had tried to establish boundaries with her music, and he was trying to, press the edges of that. And I feel like for him, he needed to kind of do that because out of all the women, right? That's her girl. Like, why you even going there?
He's a habitual line stepper.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Habitually stepping lines.
Yep.
No, like that. I mean, you're killing it with these observations. He felt like he was emasculated. He had to be reminded multiple times who was in charge.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Multiple times.
Yes.
Multiple times.
I mean,
How
even in
many
the
times
opening,
did they say it?
By multiple
even in the
people.
yes, but even in the opening scene when she performed, remember he tried to take over the performance and
Yes.
the spotlight shifted.
Yep.
So she had to like change up what she was doing in the song so they would switch it back.
Yep.
Started
Yep.
off like that.
In leadership, we always say, or I've heard, and I've always been taught that if you want to be a leader, you have to have the ability to follow first.
Bars.
You can't be a leader and not be able to follow.
That's right.
So we got a lot of levies in the world, and it's nothing yet. No, and I say that, and it's nothing wrong with the levies. We just got to get them at a point before, all that anger erupts and rage. Like we have nothing but levies basically out there.
Yep.
And I think it's just getting to the levies before, giving them the tools they need.
Right, you have to be able to work through that trauma.
Through that trauma.
Heal and rechannel. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like part of reparations should be free mental
health.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Like we have so much healing to do, and it's generational. Because we're survivors and we're surviving, but things that served us based on survival doesn't necessarily serve us when we're trying to thrive.
Survival.
Rival.
Survival. I'm gonna break the whole word down into syllables that don't even exist. Survival.
Vocabulary alert.
Yeah.
Well, I would recommend.
You would recommend?
I would.
Yeah. What about you, Annie?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Melissa?
Sure.
For sure.
Yes.
I concur. I would totally recommend. And it was lovely talking to you guys about the movie. And everybody out there who's watching, just throwing it out there, the podcast. I want to remind you to like, share, subscribe, and first you got to follow though. Remember I said about leadership, if you want to be a great leader, you got to follow me. Like, share, and subscribe. And thank you so much for joining us for our bonus Black History movie edition. Appreciate y'all.
Happy Black History Month.